The video that you just watched, the DYSA African American English or Ebonics in the Classroom video, shows how the curriculum adopted in a school district in Oakland, California really helps students translate African American vernacular English to general American English or mainstream American English in an attempt for that school district to improve their literacy test results. Research has shown that there is an overrepresentation of African American students in special ed. We all know those things, we've heard about those. Then oftentimes as educators consider African American vernacular English speech characteristics as problems in speech development, which can increases likelihood of being referred to a speech pathologist. And this was kind of backed up by Geneva Gay in this quote from page 82, where she just says, supporters of Ebonics and teaching reason that since language products and structures thought to better facilitate the thinking and learning capabilities of African American students, teachers need to know well their cultural ethos and communication styles. This can be a challenging task because socialization in different cultural systems produces different modes of speaking and thinking. It is complicated further by attitudes and assumptions to the effect that Ebonics is an undesirable form of communication for academic purposes, inappropriate for discourse in public arenas, and or symptomatic of racial and intellectual inferiority. By connecting those two videos that you've watched so far, that you've seen that everything about African American vernacular English holds up linguistically to any other dialect. While it does differ and sounds different than mainstream American English, going back to what that first video said about barbarians, I mean, everything sounds different, but everything does have structure and does have its own rules and follow those same logistics that linguistics do. Before we go to our last video, a couple of other pieces to share. Right now, it's a school's responsibility to prepare students for options after school, and one of those things is preparing them for mainstream American English, because any academia, profession, any professional environment is going to use mainstream American English. And right now, mainstream American English is very rooted in Anglo-Saxon European structures of English. And so one thing we were wondering is that, is there going to be something different? Because what we're looking at here is this was data taken from a 2012 study for the information from 2011. And in 2011, that was the very first year where U.S. children were born at a higher percentage to minority families than there were to white families. And so while there was still more white babies than any other specific racial group or ethnic group, the total still was no longer was still greater than the white counterpart. So white, in this case, was no longer the majority. And so this data starts to break down what that could look like, and we start to see even in 1990 how white the voting age was, and even in 2010 how different that's becoming. And so before we leave to our last video, we also wanted to show this projection for even 2050 in terms of our gray thing, we are white non-Hispanic, and how much we are shrinking from the majority. And if right now mainstream American English is rooted in the Anglo-Saxon white ways of speaking and white languages, will mainstream American English look different once white people are no longer the majority? And then will this whole conversation be different? Will this even be a conversation? Will this be something that we even have to fix, or will this become so ingrained into every student's way of thinking because they're going to have to code switch and flip every single time? So we just wanted to share some of this data because this is something we're going to be seeing in our classrooms very, very in the very near future, is that this growing amount of students that are not traditionally the majority. And so this is going to transition to us in our last video, which is a TED Talk from Jamila Lyscott. And she's just going to talk about her reflections in being not even a bi-dialectal student, but a tri-dialectal student. Take a look on D2L once you've watched that last video and respond to our posts. And we'll see you next weekend for our very last meeting. See ya.